So it's Minerva Jane Meredith is Macy's mother.
Meredith.
And what was her father's name?
My father's name was Chancy, Chancie.
No, but what was Macy's father's name? What was your grandfather's name?
Meredith.
Meredith. So it was Minerva
William
Jane
Thomas Meredith.
William Thomas Meredith. And then what were Chancey's parents' names? So your grandparents on the Pylant side.
Granny and Granddad Bud.
But what were their actual names? What were their given names?
So, who are you asking about now?
So Chancey's...
Mother and dad.
Yeah, your grandparents on your Pylant side.
Martin Luther Pylant.
Okay.
Martin Luther Pylant? Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And when he first went to school, he was, the teacher wanted to quiz him as to what his name was. And some little gal, when he said his name was Martin Luther, no, he said, no, I'll take that all back. His name was George Luther Pylant. And there was a gal in the schoolroom that she said, I know what his name is. and she says, he's Martin Luther Pylant. And my grandfather was said to have said to the teacher, that is a damn lie. So I guess he was 5 or 6 years old and knew how to cuss. William Thomas was my mother's dad's name, and he had Aunt Beulah, my mother's sister, had Aunt Beulah. Aunt Beulah had a son that she called W.T. William Thomas after her dad. He was as mean as a snake. Her Aunt Beulah was said to be a beautiful girl. She was said to be beautiful.
Did she die young or something?
No, she married young and she had a whole house full of kids. And the boys were as mean as snakes.
So back to the Pylant side. So it was George Luther Pylant. And then what was his wife's name? What was your grandmother's name on that side?
Gist.
No, but what was her full name?
Minnie Lee Gist.
Gotcha.
And I think you must be aware.
Oh yeah, of the Gist connection.
About George Washington's life.
Yeah.
Saved. And 90 and we kids called them 90 and Granddad, and we lived within a quarter of a mile of them.
Yeah, their house wasn't torn down yet when I was a little boy. I remember going to visit with Dad after it was torn down. So my question, Grandma Macy had a brother who was a dentist.
No, she had a son named, my dad had a brother that was a dentist.
Oh, that lived in St. Louis.
My dad only had one sibling, and that was, he was born first, and he was in the Army, very handsome man, and well turned out. And he didn't marry until he was up in his 50s, I'm sure, possibly 60s, 50s anyway.
And what was his name? He was in St. Louis. Kelsey
Otis Pylant.
Kelsey Otis Pylant. And he is the one that Rudy lived with in St. Louis for a while before the war.
Exactly. And I think the two of them are probably cut from the same piece of cloth, because I don't think either one of them got along with each other very well. I think they were too much alike.
So When Rudy entered the service, he had to go to Memphis to do it, and you were already living there, going to college when the war broke out. Were you in secretarial school in Memphis when the war started, or did you go after the war started? Because I know that's where you met Norman, was in Memphis.
I thought the war started when I was in my last year of high school.
You were born in 23, so yeah, that would have been probably last year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went to secretarial school.
High school, they were bombing Poland. The Germans had taken over.
Yeah.
People that and just slid on into people.
So you went to Memphis and you started secretarial school?
When I was picking cotton in my grandmother's field.
In 90s field or in Macy's?
My grandmother and grandfather, my mother's dad.
Meredith.
Yeah. I was picking cotton, and there was a man was sent to find me to tell me that I had won a
scholarship.
Thank you for the help. And so, when I was first out of high school, that summer, I worked at Burdick Gin in Paragould.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And then from there, I went to school, and took up my...
In Memphis?
In Memphis, to Draughn's, DRAUGHN Business College, Draughn's Business College. And it's probably still in business for that.
Well, that's where Alice Ann, my mother's cousin by marriage, went to school, I'm pretty sure. She went to a business college in Memphis.
Okay.
It's probably the same. Now, you lived in the same boarding house as Rudy, right? Did he move into the boarding house with you?
That was later. I first had two girlfriends from Childress High School. The three of us were the smartest girls in school.
Of course.
And we lived in a
rooming house?
Salvation Army.
Really? Salvation Army?
Rooming. Up on the second floor, they had at least 4 big rooms.
So it was just like a big room with bunk beds with a lot of girls staying in it?
They didn't have bunk beds. They were just regular beds, but they were smaller beds.
Like a twin bed.
And
wow.
There was a old maid that lived in one of the rooms. And another room was used by 2 sisters that were from Paragould, Arkansas. Their name was Roma Faye and Juanita Basil, Bazzel. And their brother had a business there eventually in Kennett.
Oh, Basil, Stillman, and Bean? They're married to crap, that's crazy. Well, you know, the Basils are married, so I just mentioned Alice Ann. The Basils are married into that family. It's the craziest. My grandfather, my mother's stepfather, they wrote out all the women in the wills on that side of the family.
Nice.
The women were all written out. Only the male heirs could inherit things. Now, that did not fly on the Burt Margaret side, but yeah. Yep. Wrote the women out. So even the generation that's my age, the girls don't get squat. That's the Basil family.
In Kennett?
But yeah, the Basil Stillman and Bean, they're all married into each other. Everybody's busy screwing around in the middle of the night in Kennett, you know. All right, so back to the boarding house.
There's one more couple of girls that lived together that were twins. They were twins, and they were from Mississippi. So it was this old maiden woman, this old woman, she was in her late 50s or probably early 60s.
Yeah.
Retro and thinking about it. And she had a room, and Betty Sue and Alice and I had a big room together, a corner room. And then there were twin sisters, as I told you.
How did y'all get picked by the Salvation Army to live there?
What?
How did you all get picked by the Salvation Army to live there? Like what? How did you get in on that action?
I don't remember what the details were. How? Well, probably when we found out about it was Roma Faye and her Basil and her older sister. Her older sister had already had finished her schooling, and so
Away from me.
she knew.
I know.
What?
No, I was saying you need to keep that chocolate away from me. I keep eating it.
Oh,
Get back to your story.
it's so good.
No, I'm curious. I want to hear more about it.
But anyway, we were always so nice to this elderly woman, this older woman. And when mother and dad would be going to come to Memphis, or if they knew somebody that was going to come to Memphis, or planning on it, where they would always load them down with stuff from the garden.
And vegetables and produce
and eggs and all kinds of. And we would always share them with this older woman.
Because it was wartime and that stuff was scarce, right?
Yeah. And by the way, they had a grocery store that you like picked up a gun and stuck it in a hole and it triggered and it would drop food out. Drop food that you wanted to buy.
What, like a...
It
Never took off? Was it like...
never took off.
Oh.
Anyway, it was different.
Well, that's where Piggly Wiggly was founded, so maybe it was a prototype grocery store or something. Could be.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know. You know, because, I mean, like, you think of the, those old restaurants where you pulled open the window, you put in a quarter, what's it called? The lunch, they were all over New York and Chicago, where you'd put a nickel or a dime in, and the window would open, and you'd get out a piece of pie or whatever you wanted to eat. Automat. An automat.
I was just getting ready.
Did they have an
to say-
automat in Memphis?
No, but this was somewhere.
In Chicago, they probably had automats in Chicago.
Anyway, this the personalities of the two girls that I knew best, that I shared room with, was Betty Sue was shy. She was smart, but she was sort of back offish.
Mm-hmm.
Look, he's around here looking for. Look, he look. See what the John was, and he. Oh.
No.
John. He gone back.
So what happened to all these girls? Did they go back? Did they mostly move home after the war and after school and go back to Arkansas? Did they stay in Memphis?
Well, Betty Sue went into the army,
Oh, really?
Wow.
and which was a big surprise, because she was seemingly
Timid.
shy or timid. She was smart, but she was timid. Anyway, I came in one day,
Where did Kitty go?
and turns out that Betty Sue's crying. And I wanted to know, Alice, what's the matter with her? And she told me that this older woman had been real snotty to her and had said, your mother must not be very good, or she must be a good person, not be a good person, because, or she wouldn't let you do this or whatever. Anyway, she.
About joining the army, you mean?
Hmm?
About joining the army?
No, that was before Betty. I don't think that was the reason at all. Anyway, this woman had insulted Betty Sue's mother.
Mm.
And I decided I'd take it up with her and tell her exactly what I thought about her.
And this is the older woman at
This is the older woman.
Oh.
And but the main woman that was there, she ran everything with a iron
fist.
fist. So I found this old bitch, and and so happened that when I approached her, I was coming down some stairs, and I was standing on the bottom stair. And the woman that managed the place was right there. So I had an audience. And I told that woman exactly what I thought about her. I understand that I said, my friend is upstairs crying because you made comments about her mother, suggesting that she was not a very good woman. And I said, you're not even fit to tie her shoes. You don't know anything about her, and she's been widowed birth from early on. And she acted like she was going to slap me. I said, oh, if you slap me, I was going to just crawl all, I was going to leap all over her. Anyway, we had a good time there, and eventually I went to 2 different places where I worked for my room and board. I lived in a house and had a bedroom, but I worked, the one couple was an elderly, maybe middle-aged to being
Middle-aged to older.
Middle-aged and older.
At the time, you thought they were old, but now you'd think they were young. So,
anyhow,
so when did Rudy come into the picture in Memphis? And how long did y'all live together before he shipped out?
He was going out with a girl named Faye something. I can't think about her. She's a pretty girl.
Well, did Rudy ever have a fat or ugly girlfriend? I don't think he did.
No.
I don't think my dad went after homely women.
No.
All right, so he was dating Faye. Who were you dating before Norman? What was his name?
I almost called the name of the street that we lived on.
He should have been a politician.
Well, what was the name of the man you dated before Norman? Who was your big love before Norman in high school or Memphis?
That was Joseph Colombano, and he was in.
He sounds also like he might be Italian or from Chicago.
Italian.
Was he from Chicago?
He was from. No, he is from New York City.
Ah, you like those Yankee Italians.
His parents
Get me off this fucking farm.
So did you ever get to go to New York City before you met Norman? Did you ever go to New York City to meet his family or anything?
No.
Was he in the Navy?
No.
Army?
He was in the Army. But he got the nerve up to send me a ticket to and I would send the ticket off, and his family would send me a ticket.
Oh, ticket to come to New York to visit.
For my mother, for her to come with me so that I would be safe.
Oh, well, that was sweet. Well, why didn't you go?
Well, they were nice people. I just don't like for anybody to be trying to run my life. And he was good looking. He's a nice kid. And Rudy just loved him. Rudy thought he was, in fact, everybody Rudy and I went to live in a home where the man and woman, she was a head nurse at the hospital where they had babies.
An orphanage?
No.
Children's hospital? LeBonner wasn't around then, so... Maternity ward?
She was at John Gaston, the John Gaston Hospital. And she was the head nurse for where they delivered babies. And they had 3 kids. The people own this house on Lamar Avenue. I was trying to you just give me a little while to come.
Like a big house on Lamar.
But anyway, they had a cleaning lady that came in, and she cleaned, and
They just get staring at one another. That's all they're doing.
Rudy slept in the bedroom with their high school students. And they liked his company. The high school kid was in the last year high.
I read this. Where'd she get this?
And they had a daughter that was going to nursing school following her mother as a
Read it. I think maybe this is sort of stimulating
nurse.
her.
And we went to her program they had where
The cap.
the capping, the white cap.
Yeah.
We went to that, and then they had a grown son that had just finished college, and he was in starting medical school, medicine. He's got pharmaceuticals is what the word I was trying. Anyway,
So how did you all come to be with this family? Did they just respond to an ad in the paper? Did someone know him or something?
I was living with several other girls, one of them being
Whatever her name is, Sue?
one of the sisters that I told you about.
Yeah.
Okay, one of them was living there, and I went there one time.
Sound like her attitude here lately?
I went to visit with them. It was only just we'd get on the streetcar at the same place and talk together. And they said that they
She just, forbid.
we were all talking about where we're gonna live, and anyway, they told me about the place, and so Dorothy, they had a niece. They had a niece named Dorothy Schaefer, and Dorothy and I we get on the bus together and sit and talk, and she asked me if I would share a room with her at her uncle and aunt's house, and I said okay, but I had never had anybody. One of the things, and Rudy shared the bedroom with this high school boy, and I shared a bedroom with the auntie, and all the people in the household adored Matt,
Rudy?
Joseph.
Oh, Joseph.
Joseph.
Because we bring it back to the Italian from New York City. Here we go.
And when I was trying to.
Well, it makes it hard to break it off with someone when everyone around your life loves him so much.
Yeah, I was trying. I wanted to get rid of him. Or, I liked him, but I didn't want to marry. I didn't want to be aggravated with anybody.
Was there not a spark there? Or?
If I found out that he was coming, and by the way, it turns out that his family owned a place where you go and laugh and talk and drink and swim and dance.
A country club, a nightclub?
No, what is it called?
A social club, a nightclub, a country club.
No.
You dance and drink and swim.
I didn't mean to say swim.
You dance and drink.
Right.
A private club, a restaurant, a bar, a ballroom, a nightclub.
You're getting close.
Supper club.
Nightclub. What would
No.
they call it? Like a jazz club or a...
It was like a nightclub, but they haven't set in rain for it there in
But it was a big nightclub in
it
New York
was a
City
big
that they
night-
own. And what was his name again?
What?
What was his name again? Joseph what?
Joseph?
Califano or something.
You said it was Italian. You just said the full name a minute ago. Joseph
Colombino.
Albino.
Colombano. Colombino. And one of his
Google that.
relatives had a dress shop, and so
He must have really pissed you off to get rid of something.
I can't believe that. When I look back at all these years, I think, how naive and stupid could I be? Oh. Anyway, Joe came to be where I was boarding and where Rudy was boarding.
And they all adored him, and Rudy liked him.
Rudy adored Matthew.
So you were trying to break it off with Joseph, but everyone around you loved him.
I didn't love him.
So my dad was a rebound, is that what you're saying?
Apparently so. So wait a minute. So how did Joseph take it when you broke it off? Did he pine for you? Did he call after you? Did he say,
God.
"Screw you! I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You're dead to me"?
Around, there he was.
So then, how long after that did you meet Norman?
He wanted to buy plane tickets for his family. Wanted to buy plane ticket for my mother and me, for me to go.
And that's what ran you off, scared you off, was going to visit the family in New York.
I was already scared. I just didn't want to have. I just didn't want to get my life all mixed up with somebody else.
Some Yankee.
Some Yankee, especially some Yankee, or some
New Yorker. So you met Norman at a dance at the Peabody Hotel. Where did you meet Norman?
No, it wasn't at the Peabody. It was at the Salvation Army.
Oh, the Salvation Army comes in.
They owned this huge building there in Memphis.
And they had dances there?
I love the Salvation.
No, it was not Salvation Army. It was the USO.
USO building?
Yeah, the USO. That's where they and
Oh, USO.
USO and entertaining servicemen.
I gotta wonder if you and Rudy and Bert Margaret all ran into each other back in the day and just didn't realize it or knew it, because Bert
Very
Margaret
possible.
volunteered at the USO, and she was a Red Cross nurse.
Really?
And
How old was she?
she was born in 1915, so she was 6 years older than Rudy. So she was a little older than y'all. She worked for Union Planters Bank pretty much the whole time she was there, and she didn't get married till she was 28. In fact, when she got married, she had a guy calling her on the phone, crying, begging her not to marry my mom's father. And then he was killed in a plane crash. There was an American Airlines plane crash in 1943 from Nashville to Memphis, and there were only like 8 people on the plane, and one of them was like the head of the state senate of Tennessee, and then the head of the FBI, and then this guy. And Bert Margaret was in the hospital. She almost died from a tubal pregnancy shortly after she got married. And she had roses delivered, and they were signed Love E. His name was Elmer. And
I had a cousin named
Elmer. And they said, "Get these out of here." She said, "Get these flowers out of here." And the front page of the newspaper was the plane crash from the night before, and he was one of the victims. Anyhow, I just feel like you all probably ran in the same circles, because her cousins all lived in Memphis, and
So that was your
my mom's
mother's
mother's
father.
my
That was
mother's
your mother's father?
my mother's father was the one that actually did marry Bert Margaret, but Bert Margaret's beau that she dated forever in Memphis
Was the one that got killed.
Yeah, he was a salesman, and he lived in the Kimbrough Apartments, which are still there, off Union in Midtown. Very cute apartment building. And he worked in the Sterling Building downtown, which is still there, boarded up. Art Deco building, completely boarded up. Interesting. So, all right, so you met Norman at a dance. How long after you broke up with Joseph did you meet Norman? Tell the truth now. How long after you dumped Joseph was it before you met Norman?
Oh, I met him. I met Norman during that time.
Oh, so now it gets a little interesting. So you were dating Joseph and you met Norman. So you kicked
Yeah.
Joseph to the curb to date Norman.
And I remember vividly the back. What happened was Dorothy and I decided that we would like to set up our own, have our own apartment together. So we moved 2 doors from her aunt and uncle's house. And
Into an apartment building or
it
into an
was
apartment?
No, it was just a big house, and we just got half of the house. And and the same old. Norman started
Norman
Yeah,
started
like a
calling
son.
around.
like trying to sweet talk me, and I didn't want. What happened was that I remember we had gone to a movie. I don't remember what the movie was, but I was standing on this tree had roots that come up out of the ground, big
Weeds.
long root. So I was standing up on this root, and I was as tall as he was. I was looking right at his eyes. And anytime he'd ever talk about Chicago and about his growing up, well, he would, it was always, there was never any girls invited or discussed, any girlfriends. So that night I said to him, look, Garver, and I never called him Norman. He was always Garver. And I said, look, Garver, every time that you've ever talked about what all you places you go and things that you do and who you're with, you never mention any girl. As sure as God, you got a girlfriend up there. And he said, well, I have had girls, girlfriends, but he says they either find out that I'm not good enough looking, or good enough, or and he says, and they drop me, or I have to say adios.
Wait a minute, were Joseph and Norman friends? Did they know each other?
What?
Did Joseph and Norman know each other?
Oh God, no.
So
But
where was Joseph
they did
when
meet each other?
they did what?
Eventually.
They met each other?
Yeah.
After you
In
did they were you
fact,
dating both at the same time still, or
What happened was when I didn't feel like it was. I did not feel that it was Joe's business who I went with, and where I went and what I did. And
that went over like a fart in church, I'm sure.
say again.
I said that went over like a fart in church.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I didn't want him thinking that I was his, or that I was going to ever be his, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one time, what had happened? There was a woman in Memphis is from a very wealthy family that took a shine to me, and she ran in cycles of where the people were well to do, and she gave me these huge rolls or things like that, would be where they could take as many of those tickets as they wanted to go see movies and stay whatever. And she would give me a large quantity for me to give away, especially on if the soldiers came in and they were wet, hadn't been caught in the rain, well, she would see to it that they were dried off and put back into being able to do what they wanted to do without having to be wet, cold. And so she wanted me to entertain or, you know, and one day I was at this USO talking with her, and Norman came in. Garver came in, and I introduced him to her, and went on about my business. And she said, "What about this Italian kid?" I said, "Oh, he's all right, but I just don't want to have somebody being possessive of me and hanging on to me like they, my boss or that's what they own."
So basically, he was in love with you, and being nice to you, and you were dismissive and meh, because he didn't do it for you.
Anyway.
And then, well, no, I just want to make sure we have all the facts on the table here. And then you started dating Norman at the same time. So apparently this runs in the family, because this is something I would do. And so instead of actually telling Joseph to go sod off to hit the bricks, you just kind of let him fizzle out.
Well, what I started to say was he intercepted Norman one day during this time and said, "Well, you didn't she's my girl. You know, she's my girl."
That's what Joseph said to Norman.
And Norman said to him, "Well, if this were in the movie, I'd pick you up and throw you off it, because we was in those days the bank was 2-layered. I mean, you know,
so it's the second floor of the bank.
Yeah, it had a
balcony or
a balcony.
It's an atrium.
A balcony with all four ways around.
So it was an old school bank. And so he said, if this was the movies, this is when I'd throw you off the balcony. That's what Norman said to Joseph. Did they have a laugh about it, or did they get off? Did Joseph get pissed off and storm off? So then you started dating Norman, and the rest is history. Did you know this about your mom and dad?
Just trying to open up a can of worms. You just trying to.
Rudy, of course, our grandparents were in love with him. And so my grandmother got to where she wasn't driving anymore, so she gave the car to Rudy. And Rudy had this girlfriend, a real pretty girl named Faye. And Norman and I, the four of us, would go on to those big steamers with the wheels that go around.
Yeah, the ferry, the riverboat.
Huh?
Riverboat ferry.
Riverboat. We'd go on it like on a Friday night and go dancing and sometimes, you know, they'd have a conga line and had all kinds of fine.
Well, I know the people that lived up in St. Louis, and they'd take the boat would go from St. Louis to Memphis and back and forth. So people that lived in Portageville would get on the boat on a Friday night, and they'd drink and party all the way down to Memphis. They'd hang out and party in Memphis all weekend long, and then go back on Sunday night, and they'd be drunk showing up to work on Monday morning. I know. Your generation thinks you invented fun in the 60s. My generation thinks we invented fun in the 90s with raves, but your generation was having a pretty damn good time back in the day. I mean, Frank Sinatra was singing about cocaine back in the 40s. We didn't invent fun. You all had Prohibition, so people worked around Prohibition, and then you were on the heels of Prohibition.
Well, I wasn't much of a drinker. In fact, I don't think I drank at all, hardly.
I bet Norman would have some stories to tell if he were here. So you all go on the riverboat, and you all drink and dance and do a conga line. Where would the riverboat go to that you go on? Would you go down to New Orleans or up to St. Louis?
No, we didn't. We just go down.
Just for the night or right around?
Be down on the boat for about 2.5 or 3 hours and come back up.
Oh, so just a mild cruise.
A 3-hour cruise.
So then,
one is.
So how long after that did Norman pop the question?
Oh.
Was he fast? So. Had you been to Chicago to meet his family, or did they come to? Ooh,
no.
They must have loved this.
But they were
Arkansas. They probably thought you were an Arkansas hillbilly snatching up their.
Pa Garver had was going to fix the roof off. They had this good sized building that would house 2 cars, and it had upstairs. You could go upstairs and hang your clothes during the winter.
It was a coach
After you-
house. A coach house.
Like behind a brownstone type thing.
3 flat. He had a 3
Now,
flat.
what got me on that subject?
Something happened to his dad?
Grandpa broke his back and they were unable to come. It's a story
Yeah,
I
Pa didn't come, but he had the best. He was always going to do. They planned things, and then
So meanwhile,
Dad-
you were living in your own apartment with your girlfriend. You all had moved down and were splitting the house. Had Rudy gone off to pilot school by then?
he had gone off
To college.
His leaving and going in the service was one of the reasons why she and I decided that we were going to have this
House.
house. So anyway, when Norman he said, no, he says, I've had, so he said, I've got a friend named Ed Pino, which sounded so weird, and I got another Bill Purcell, and then I have cousins, and I said, well, tell me, why is it that I said, you must have a girlfriend that you can run with. Oh, he said, I find that oftentimes they either are looking for someone or that are closer or that are moneyed. But he says, and I was standing on this route, but I think I'm falling in love with you.
Did you run? What'd you do when he said that?
Oh no, because here I was trying to get rid of
Joseph.
Joseph.
And what happened to Joseph when you got rid of him? Did he stalk you? Did he marry another girl from Memphis?
No time flat. He was
Off with another gal?
sent to Europe.
But he lived through the war?
As far as I know, yes.
You never bumped into him in an airport or in a restaurant or?
No, I would recognize him, I would think, because he's a good-looking fellow.
Life's funny
Well,
like that, you know. Sometimes you
Larry's
just
much
run
more
into
handsome.
people you least
Handsome
expect it.
and very sophisticated.
That was really the only serious boyfriend besides Norman?
What?
Was that the only serious boyfriend you had besides Norman? In Memphis. Was that it, or did you have another
I don't know
serious?
what you call serious.
Well, I don't know. Someone else's whose heart you broke. We could start with that. No?
I didn't.
Cry.
I was not.
Name any
interested
other
in
man that
getting
cried over you.
married. What?
Name another guy who cried or pined over you. She's thinking. None?
Oh. Out of high school, I was a senior in high school, and there was a fellow named Malcolm Harrison. He's a tall, good-looking, and back then you couldn't find a job. There was almost no job when I was in my last 2 years of high school.
Because of the Depression? Because the war was starting? What?
Both. Yeah, the war was starting. They were already bombing the hell out of Poland and some of the other countries. And anyway, he had a couple sisters, very nice mother. I liked her, and I'd heard about her, and she was mine. But as far as ever, that was just in high school. Hell, I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to have anybody tell me what I had to do or what I wasn't going to do.
What did you want to do after college?
Well, actually, I wanted to go to college for a year. I always wanted to get a doctorate.
No, but what was your original college plan back when you were, 18, when you wanted to go to college? What did you want to be then?
I'm not even sure. I guess I wanted to be a teacher because I wanted to have a doctorate, and I got to where I would laugh and say, "Yeah, I'd like to have somebody draw a stitch or paint on my forehead. Call me Dr. Billy."
A tattoo on your forehead, call me Dr. Billy. So, what was the job you had when you lived in the rental house? Where's the lid for this chocolate? I need to put this. I got to put the lid on this. She's not eating any of it, and I'm sitting here eating it like I brought it for her. And I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here like a fat girl. I know. I don't want any. No. I feel like I'm gonna go into some sort of
Chocolate
diabetic
connection.
sugar shock or something. I don't know. Like I've had
carry
so
it
much
away.
Put
sugar.
a lid on.
No, because we'll put it on her right side and let her eat some. Thank you. All right. So, what did you do for a job when you lived in Memphis? While you were in school, did you work at Where'd you work? A bank? Were you a clerk? Were you a
Well,
secretary?
When I was still taking classes,
What are you doing, baby?
well, I went to Sears and I took.
You worked at Sears?
I went to Sears Roebuck and Company, and they. It was at Christmas time, coming up on Christmas, and so they hired me as well as a lot of other girls
She do.
to take orders from people that were on page so and so.
They call in on the telephone, or
Yeah.
they? So people call on the telephone with the catalog for Sears, and you were the girl on the other end of the phone.
Well, anyway, that's what I.
What was the worst? What was the worst job you ever had when you were a kid like that? That
Oh,
age?
the worst one. Ooh. And they were all so nice to me. Such nice people. Oh, so nice. But the subject, it was selling stocks and bonds, and just bored the hell out of me. There was really nothing tangible for me to look at. And I got through it. But then I got a job. I went to this place to be interviewed, and I had put on my best bib and tucker, my hat, my shoes, my everything. And I waited, and I waited. They'd call people in. They'd come back out again. They'd call people in. And I sat there. I thought, what in hell is going on? But every time they would come to the door to let this person come in, I'd always be have a pleasant smile on my face.
Oh, convivial, and aren't I charming and beautiful?
Yeah, I'm one hell of a lot smarter than that person was. So get yourselves busy and get me a job. Anyway, I got a job. I worked in the Steric building.
Did you just hear me say the Steric building? Yeah, that was the place to work. That's where.
No, I didn't hear her say
A second ago, I said Margaret's beau, the guy that she was in love with,
Oh,
he was killed in a plane crash. And he lived in the Kimbrough Apartments, which are still there, very fancy, and he worked in the Steric building, which is still there, but boarded up. It's a beautiful Art Deco building. It was white, and now it's painted tan. And it's owned by one family, and it's just sitting there empty.
the Steric building?
Steric building is sitting there empty, boarded up. Completely empty, unused. Such a shame. Beautiful
On
street.
Thursdays, I think it was, I would go down the street to a place that I think was on Thursdays, and they had their specialty was beef ribs, beef ribs smothered in gravy, and man, I would go there and then I'd almost be so full I wouldn't be able to hardly eat anything for supper. Anyway.
So you worked at the Sterrett Building doing what? Is that the Stocks and Bond place?
Well, one of the things was I was the one that anyone and everyone, when they came to talk with somebody, they had to go through me.
Oh, to be allowed into the elevator, you mean? You were the receptionist of the
then,
building?
And then, of course, I knew how, I was a good typist, and knew how to treat people. And
so you were like an office manager / receptionist. Now, did you do that for the whole building? If people wanted to see anyone in the building, they had to go through, or were they a receptionist for an office?
I was, in order to get through to do whatever they wanted to do, they had to come by me.
Once they walked in the lobby of the building?
Once they walked in,
gotcha.
They would see me, and so it was very pleasant. And there was an awful nice woman there that she took up with me. She's an awful nice woman. She was married to a man who could be he's probably old enough to be her dad. And she was so pretty. And she had me to their home on that main drag in
Peabody?
the main
Poplar?
It could have been Peabody.
Well, there's Poplar, there's Madison, there's Peabody, there's
This one's got lots of trees.
Lamar.
But anyway,
Oh, what's the one that goes
I was able
north-south?
she had me to her home.
What was her name? Do you remember?
Not right now. I might be able to bring it up. For a long time I remember it.
So anyhow, she'd invite you over to the house, and you got to go over to her house and have dinner or something one night.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband was much older. Did they have children or no?
They had I believe the daughter was the older of the two, the daughter and a son. They were always very nice to me, very nice indeed.
Now, did you sew back then? Would you make your own clothes, or did you have to go buy things in stores? Did you know how to do a dress pattern and sew, or did Macy do things for you?
That sort of thing, and did, and I got compliments on it because I chose fabrics that were washable and stood up well. During that time, Matthew, there was an awful lot. You had to really search sometimes for things because
The war was on, so there were shortages and rations.
The war was on. No cars were being built, and here Rudy had 90th and Granddad's car.
So that was a big deal for y'all to have a car.
That was a big deal to have a car.
So when Rudy left and went off to the Air Force or Air Corps or Army to learn how to fly planes and went to college, he went to Ohio first, right? Is that where Rudy went first? Is Ohio when he left Memphis? I know he was at Ohio State, but I feel like he was in Montana or somewhere out west somewhere for a while too. Did you get to keep the car?
Or
did it have to go back to your grandparents?
I went back to grandparents.
Well, that was shitty.
My
Rudy went to Ohio State?
Huh?
I didn't know that.
What'd she say?
Rudy went to Ohio State. Rudy was also bumping warm fuzzies with the commanding officer's daughter at one of these places. And
That's in New Orleans.
is that when he was dating the commanding officer's daughter?
Daughter? Yeah. In New Orleans.
See, Mother knows these little juicy tidbits.
And he did. He left a woman at the altar. I think it was Dad and not Uncle Jack. And I want to say it was like
I think it was your dad.
I was my dad. And were you all there when he left the woman at the altar? Did the whole family come up for the wedding?
That was in New Orleans.
Was it a shotgun wedding?
I don't think so.
So this is
If
the
it
same.
was, why it was kept.
So
secret.
this is the commanding officer's daughter. Is the one that he left at the altar. Now I wonder how much longer after that Dad was kicked out of flight school. Probably not long after. I would assume it would be immediately after. The story my dad would tell was they decided they had enough pilots and they needed more riflemen. It sounds more like I fucked over the commanding officer by leaving his daughter at the altar, and next thing I knew, my ass was marching with a rifle headed out to Saipan. I think that's a little more now.
He ended up
Well,
in the Pacific Theater.
boy, how these conversations sort of just figure things out. All those glossed over, again, it's the Pylant turds being polished and put in the window as a diamond ring. Now we're finding out, God, all these people are married. Did you ever remember Jack or Max's first wives' names? No? It'll come to you.
Teddy has some skeletons in his.
Shut up. Oh, you didn't just marry Sandra and go to
no,
church?
He was only married, but cheating. He's a cheater. Mac was a cheater.
Max was a cheater?
Bad.
You mean while he was with Mary, he cheated?
He's a cheater. Teddy was a cheater. Jack, I asked Jack point blank, did you ever cheat? He said no. I believe it.
I could see Jack didn't cheat. I know my dad cheated on my mom, but
Yeah, Rudy was a cheater.
Rudy was a cheater. I've never.
Ira, nobody would have Ira, so.
But Ira used to be really, really, really smart, and then he got meningitis, right? Ira was the most brilliant one of all the kids.
And he was extremely good looking.
And apparently that's true because Jenny Barnes said that Ira by far was the best looking of the 5 brothers. And
He was
I find that
tall.
unbelievable.
He got meningitis and he almost
he was
died.
handsome.
Well, yeah.
He
But
was
did-
a good looking.
Do you remember him getting sick with meningitis? He was living in Memphis too, wasn't he? How much younger was he than
He had
Rudy?
been just inducted into the army. Or was about
Yeah,
to
he-
be inducted.
He had just been inducted into the army, and they were going. They wanted him to come to Little Rock.
But Ira's just younger than you, or is Max younger than you?
Okay. Rudy is born
Than you.
2 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 years almost to the day. March the 28th, March 25th. Ira.
Gotcha.
Handsome, good looking. Oh yeah. And the girls were wild about him.
So you graduated high school
He
in
was
40.
sort of a bully boy, and I learned early on the thing to do was to use him.
So he was 2 years behind you in school, and Rudy was 2 years older than you in school.
Exactly.
So you graduated high school in 41. So you graduated high school. They hadn't bombed Pearl Harbor yet, but they were. See, when you graduated high school, they were bombing Poland, but it was before you were living in.
Going to Publix.
All right, bye. See you in a bit.
Getting some
So-
insure.
So they were bombing Poland when you graduated high school, but they hadn't bombed Pearl Harbor yet. You were living in Memphis when they bombed Pearl Harbor, I would assume, or somewhere. Because Pearl Harbor happened in December of 41, and you graduated high school in May of 41. Which means Ira graduated high school in 43, which means the World War II was still going on when he joined the Army. And that's when Ira got meningitis and got sick. Or did he go to college and then join the Army?
He was
Because Ira was born in 25, which means he graduated high school in 43. Unless he graduated sooner because he was so smart. But he was 2 years behind you in school,
I didn't
right?
know he was so smart.
Apparently he was brilliant. And he got meningitis
Whoever
and almost
told you
died.
that? Do you remember Ira being brilliant?
Rudy told Sarah Ann that he was super smart. Billy always said he was super smart. Ira he got meningitis and it literally fried parts of his
burned up his
brain.
brain. It burned up his brain, and that's what it does. He's lucky. He was lucky he survived.
So Ira was 2 years apart. Then was Max 2 years younger than Ira, or Max? How much younger were Max and Jack? So Jack was born in 1930. He was a Depression era baby. So Max would have been born somewhere around 27, 28. So everyone's about 2 years apart in age.
Until
And then Ted was the oops baby who was born in what, 40? He was just a year or two old when Gloria was born, wasn't he?
right.
Or a couple years old? How old was he when Gloria was born?
How old is who?
Teddy. He was born in 40.
He was I don't know, about 3 or 3.5.
When you got married or when Gloria was born?
Did what?
He was 3 or 3.5 when Gloria was born. Yeah. Talk about an oops baby.
Well, he wasn't down.
Doesn't that have more to do with like the chemicals and
Age.
Yeah.
Age related.
So Ira joined the army. He was 2 years behind you in school, and the war was still going on. Rudy left someone at the altar. Then he got his ass shipped off to be a rifleman. And then when Max joined the army, Korea was going on, right? Because he was in Korea.
I think so.
Tell the story of Grandma being threatened with arrest.
Oh, when they fled and came to California. Was that in the 50s, or was Teddy a little boy then?
Yes. And Rudy and Max were left to do the farm, I think.
So this would have been after the war.
And well, they were still doing. The story is, well, Mother can tell it.
What was this?
Well,
When Grandma was going to be arrested and they had to run away to California.
they went to California. Who did they live with in California? Who was
They-
who was
Grandpa had a job overseeing a strawberry farm, picking strawberries. A bunch of Mexicans picking strawberries.
And he got it before they went out, or got it when they got out of there? So they weren't in like
I don't
LA.
know.
They were somewhere north of Los Angeles,
I don't
where all
know.
the farming is.
I just know California. But I think in that valley, the famous valley for the,
Well, Roxanne and Yusuf and I drove through it. It was insane. It just was
truck farms.
miles and miles and miles and miles and I mean, it was just as far as the eye could see for just miles and miles. I finally fell asleep.
The richest land.
Yeah. So
They're sucking the Colorado River dry.
So Grandma Macy beat the shit out of some woman, right?
Because of Ira.
Because of Ira. What did Ira have to do with it?
Well, apparently before the embattlement of Mother, the teacher was a real smart ass. She was no match for my mother. She was a teacher, but and my mother, was a teacher. But she, there was the way the story went that I remember was the guy had one of the fellows in the classroom had a eraser, a wooden eraser, that the.
Yeah.
Anyway, he decided he was going to take it up with Ira and hit him with the. And
When Ira's in high school, you
but
mean?
when they in high school, and I think he was a senior. I'm not sure, but I think he was a senior at that time. And he, the guy that had the eraser, asked the teacher, made the motion, okay, was it okay for him to hit Ira, and he hit Ira in the head with it. And that night or the day before, or the next night, the day he went to a party and he was getting ready he needed to be appearing on a Monday, on a Friday night. at this party, this to do that was apparently everybody was wanting to. There was always somebody having to go into the army, and so they'd have parties. Well, anyway, he hit my brother that night or the next day. He started suffering with his head, and he just cried and he cried, and he just suffering something terrible. They had a doctor with him, and the doctor didn't know what was the matter with him, so he didn't, wasn't able to diagnose him. So they took him to another doctor, and that doctor was concerned. Anyway, the long story was that they had at least 2 doctors, and 3 times that he was seen by some doctor. And Mother got it all figured out in her head that blow to his head, the way it hit him, had
caused meningitis.
has caused the meningitis.
Oh, I thought the meningitis happened when he was in the army. I thought it happened.
Well, he was being inducted or something.
He was supposed to be. He was supposed to go in on a Monday morning, and this happened to him Friday night and Saturday.
He got hit in the head, then the meningitis kicked in.
And Mother figured it out that he had been hale and hearty and fine before he was hit this way. And so anyway, she asked Alma Barnes, "Do you know who this woman is?" And
Who? Alma Mar?
Barnes.
Alma, mother's our neighbor.
Alma Barnes. Okay.
Yeah. So she said, "Yeah, I'll know her." Well, about 3 weeks went by, and Ira was worse and worse. He was so bad I thought he was going to die, and I got on a train and went to Little Rock, where the army was, where he was going to see him. And he had they'd been giving him medicine, but they hadn't been staying with him while to see to it that he was actually swallowing the medicine, and he was pulling the medicine out of his mouth and dropping it between the wall and the army dispensary.
That was smart.
And when I went to see him, they had just discovered, and they were able, of course, to keep him. But he was scarcely knew who I was. Anyway, so Mother decided that bitch had to
pay.
She had to pay, and so it went on 2 or 3 weeks went past, and Mother was sitting with Alma on the street looking at the traffic. And Alma said, "Oh, Macy, there she
Like
is.
in Leachville or Monette? Somewhere?
There she is." And Mother hauled out, and she just beat the living shit out of her.
And then the woman said she was going to press charges.
Mother didn't care, and my dad didn't care. They had money to take care of it. And they had more friends, of course, by far, than what this bitch had.
And she had to use her food stamps to buy a steak. And that was one of her complaints, was that she had to use one of her stamps for steaks to
her
take
rations.
the swelling down.
Her rations for. So
Remember that part.
So question. So when did Grandma Macy quit teaching school? How old was she? How old was she teaching school while you were growing up?
Well, when she was pregnant with Rudy.
But then she quit.
Hmm?
After Rudy was born, she quit teaching school.
Teach very long then.
Yeah.
And from time, even when we kids were growing up,
She'd
from time to
substitute
time,
or
there'd be
something.
somebody that would need to be replaced, temporarily. and Mother would go to Childress. I don't know where else she'd go to, but she would.
Did she have her own car back then? Did you all have a phone the whole time growing up? How old were you when you got your first phone?
Oh, they were hard to come by because we didn't have electricity.
How old were you when you got electricity? I remember you saying you had like oil lanterns or something.
We coal oil lamps, and then they came out with these beautiful big lamps that stood easily this high, and the
Kerosene.
the web that had the white in it that was supposed to throw the white was woven.
Didn't that make a mess inside the house? Didn't it make the walls like smoky or
So the thing
greasy?
about it was when you at night when you pass other people's houses, you would see yellow. They're inside their room, where their lights were yellow, and
Because they had lanterns going.
and our lights were real white, and it flew, and you could see it, real good. I think that was one of the reasons why I was such a good student and such a good reader.
And what kind of radio did
What
you
was
say you
that
had?
called?
You said you have a crystal radio. You had a crystal radio that ran without electricity or something crazy like that. I thought you said you all had a crystal radio, and then I googled it. It's really a thing. Is a radio?
A crystal radio.
Yeah, you said you had a crystal radio
Oh,
ran
yeah,
without electricity.
there would be nights when you come, Texas would come in just as clear as a crystal. You'd think this right next door to you. And I remember when
What the fuck are you?
I think she's gonna say Charles Lindbergh.
Lindbergh.
Oh, okay.
I knew that's where she was going. Well, what about when what's her face disappeared? What's her name? Her Lockheed Martin. What was her name? Amelia Lockhart. Do you remember?
Yeah,
Earhart. Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, they just had some pictures of her the other day in the paper here.
It was a big deal when she went missing with her Lockheed Martin plane or
They
whatever.
still, think that they might be able to find her plane or her.
Well, who was the smartest person you ever knew, Mother?
Watch her say herself. Who was the smartest person you knew growing up? Like when you moved to Memphis and started working, like who's the smartest person you've known in your lifetime? Not known of, but knew. Like a friend or a family member. Like
don't
who's the
really
smartest
know.
person?
I don't really know. I had to think a long time about that, I guess.
Well, do you think Ira was the smartest of your brothers?
No.
Who do you think was the
No,
smartest?
he was a bully. Ira was a bully. And he had tried to, at least he was toward me. I never could, he'd jump on, he couldn't hear, he was always denying what I was saying and pissed me off because I knew I was right.
Who was the smartest one in your family, you figure?
The one that was the smartest in my family.
Okay, well.
I think my mother was smart, but I don't recall ever having either she or Dad. I remember one instance of Dad. Mother had just given birth to Max, and she was in the middle bedroom, and my dad picked me up and put me on his lap and he had a cane back chair, just a cane chair, not a rocker, and he was rocking that with no rocker.
Do you remember your parents fighting?
No, I do not remember any.
Do you remember your father not talking to your mother for days and weeks? Mary
No.
talks about that.
No.
Aunt Mary
But towards the end, right?
talks about how
I do remember watching. Sometimes I'd watch, and my dad would sort of,
jack off.
well, he'd be looking at her and he'd go,
Kind of like scratch his belly, like let's go have sex.
scratching his balls, like, yeah. And
That's the signal.
and then on top of that, then sometimes he'd give her this.
Just like motion towards the bedroom. So, but I thought they fought like cats and dogs. I thought the old saying was Grandma
You thought
Macy.
my parents kept.
I thought that they fought. I thought they used to fight.
Oh no! Where did you get that idea?
I thought they didn't get along all the time, and it was and she, yeah.
Oh no!
That's what I heard. That's what I heard from Mary. That's the story I got through Mary too. Is that Macy and Chancey used to fight. Macy never really went to church, and then when Chancey died, it was oh my Chancey this and oh my Chancey that.
Who said that?
Your sister-in-law.
That's the way you saw it. Or who
That's the
saw
way I
it?
heard it.
Well,
I wasn't alive. I never met my Grandpa Chancey.
I remember him.
I only knew Grandma Macy making us taffy and her crazy stories and her saying, Grandma Macy loves you, but I sleep with a gun. Don't come by at night.
Who said that?
Grandma Macy.
Who said that?
Grandma Macy. And you know, my mom and dad were fighting like cats and dogs, and my dad was being a real son of a bitch to her. Now, my dad paid for all of his wrongdoings. He spent the last 19 years of his life single and alone, and now that I've gone through a horrible breakup, I know what my dad was going through, and I can empathize. But I remember my mom telling a story that when she and dad were fighting, her parents were in Florida, and she just left the house and went driving. I remember this. My mom would leave and be gone for she'd leave all night, and she'd just go drive around. Sometimes she'd be in her nightgown when she'd leave. And she said that one time she didn't know where she was going to go, and she was so upset, and she drove to the farm, and she said she sat outside Macy's house. This would have been before you and Norman were probably already living there. Well, I don't know. And she said all she could think was she really wanted to go knock on the door and just go in and sleep at Macy's and be with Macy, but she's all I could think was she had that pistol. I didn't want to go knocking on her door in the middle of the night, take a chance on getting shot. So
Sad.
yeah, my dad was not nice to my mom.
Really?
But he paid for it. He was a real son of a bitch. He was
Well,
cheating
see, I
on her.
always
He was
thought they
sleeping
got
with
along
everyone
good.
in town knew he was screwing his secretary, and then he would fight. He was so mean he was just mean. But
He
then
was mean to Will and
he beat Will up.
he beat Will up.
Yeah,
I
a
didn't
lot.
know that.
He once picked Will up and threw him across the kitchen and threw him into the fridge. He'd scream at him in front of the rest. He was really awful to William. And Will forgave him.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
But you know, Dad spent 20 years paying for it. And that's something that Will's admitted, I've admitted, that Rudy paid. He paid the ultimate price because he lost everything he loved by being selfish and not... I always wonder if my dad would have just said, you know, Sarah Ann, like in the beginning, I'm really sorry. I fucked up. How can we fix this? She would have taken him back. Because I've asked her. But,
Would she
so...
have taken back her first husband, Sexton?
I don't know about that one. I think she was really in love with Dad. So my cousin Kay, who was my mom's best friend forever, said that you have to remember that your mom and Dad really loved each other.
Oh, that's good.
Your
That's sweet.
mom did what?
That Sarah Ann and Rudy really loved each other. So,
Even though it was
but it all kind of started going downhill. I don't know. After we moved into the big house on Jackson, and there were financial issues, and then Dad started, and then Mom became depressed, and she had the same internist as Elvis, and she was popping Darvon and Valium and sleeping all day, and Dad started screwing around, and wasn't very discreet about it. So, it happened.
Yeah.
But and at the end, they ended up being friends. The only person that could comfort Rudy while he was in pain was my mom. She would come over and check on him, and then at the end, when he was in bed with hospice, it was Sarah Ann. He would sit there moaning in pain. And Pam, Jeff, Dave, me, none of us could do anything to comfort him. And Mom could just walk up and take his hand and say, "What is it, Rudy?" And he'd stop. He'd stop crying. So I know he paid for it, but I wonder what it is about the Pylant boys that made them all such... Because that didn't get passed on to me, and it certainly didn't get passed on to Davey or Jeff. But I'm curious what it was about Max and...
I've often wondered that. What was wrong with them?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
so
Billy
that's-
wasn't that way. Billy didn't, like...
I mean,
Billy wasn't
I
shitty.
never-
let's ask Mother, what was wrong with your family? And she was offended, of course. But
Well, I wonder what it was. See, you weren't that way, but I wonder what it was that made Rudy and Max and Ted...
beat up their wives.
Well, just be shitty to the women in their lives. Like, they'd start off being all sweet and wanting them, and then I don't know why they...
I mean, Max threw Mary. He slugged her, according to a neighbor there at the cabin. He hit her harder than he had ever seen a man hit another man. Slugged her, and
Well, and then you
Anna
wonder why.
talks
Then you
about-
wondered why Anna and everyone ended up having shitty first marriages, because everyone ends up marrying their
or
parents.
second marriages. I mean,
Yeah, but everyone ends up marrying their parent to some degree or another. Either the good characteristics or the bad characteristics. But I always wondered what that was. I didn't realize that Ted or Max, because they're all held up on such a pedestal. I didn't
I
realize
know.
they'd been.
And they shouldn't be.
I always thought it was my dad. But I can see the good in my dad, because Rudy was an awesome person. Like, what a nice guy. He just really screwed up. There was a time there he screwed up his second marriage. Mom was just as guilty, but he screwed up, and he regretted it for the rest of his life. And I feel so sorry for him that he had to spend the last 20 years of his life so lonely. And my mom told me that he did say, what made me say that is because my mom said that he one night stopped out at the gin and said to her, he'd just stop by and have coffee because he knew she'd be working late nights, sometimes all night, and he'd stop by just to check in on her. And there was a day when a guy at the gym was killed, and Dad literally carried Mom out of the funeral and drove her home. She was so upset. He was eaten alive by a piece of machinery. But he said to my mom, Rudy said to Sarah Ann, he just went in one night, they were having coffee, they were talking about me or whatever, just the weather, and he looked at her out of the clear blue and said, "I really fucked up, didn't I?" And Sarah Ann said, "Yeah, Rudy, you did." And she said
I
that
never
was,
dreamed of that.
and she said that was the point where everything between the two of them was fine.
Or evened out.
He finally admitted to being awful. He said, Sarah, I really fucked up, didn't I? And she said, "Yeah, Rudy, you did." And she said, moving forward, they were A-okay. And he was friends with Bert Margaret. He was friends with Sarah Ann. Everybody got along with everybody. Rudy would stop by and check in on Bert Margaret. And when Dad got sick, Mom would go check on Dad. I mean, he had a whole army of people checking in on him, but he paid for it for forever because he wouldn't admit he was wrong. And I think there's just something in our blood that doesn't want to admit when we're wrong. It's in our DNA. I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm right. God damn it, I'm right.
If I said it,
My middle name's right. My middle name is right.
If I said it, it must be right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's interesting. So what are their names? What are the first wives' names? The First Wives Club. Max's first wife, Jack's first wife. What were their names?
She doesn't remember.
It'll come to her. She'll remember it tonight.
Time ago.
She'll remember it though. It'll come out of the clear blue sky. It'll just hit her. You never know when that sort of flash comes back.
Well, it never, ever,
See, I
it
think
never,
part of it-
ever occurred to me that I would hit woman or that he hit me back.
No, you would have gotten a kitchen knife and stabbed him in the arm. I'd like to see a guy try to hit you.
I once
I'd pay money to
once in a
take a
great while,
time
I'd
machine
say-
back to about between 1935 and 1985 and try to see a man hit you. I'd pay money to see that. So
Maybe that's why Mother held herself up so high and was like, don't hook up with me. I'm not interested. I'm not.
well, and
Maybe
you
that was part of why, the same way that her brothers, had bad relations.
But I didn't know that.
But see, I don't think Rudy had bad relations with Bernice. I think they were probably
so.
okay. And I think Dad had really good relations with Sarah Ann until he wasn't getting his way. And when he wasn't getting things exactly his way and things were in strife, and Sarah Ann was very strong-willed, Sarah Ann was basically
I picked up that she was strong-willed, but
she would be when it came to like money and because Dad would come up with, I can remember them fighting. Dad would come up with cockamamie plans. Like he came home one day with like a brand new Cadillac or whatever it was, like a new station. We didn't have any money, and Mom was like, Rudy, how are we paying for this? Like, we're already living in this house we can't afford. How are we paying? And we've got Davey was in college, Will was going off to college. We can't afford a $20,000 car. Well, I'm going to work it out in trade. And then he was planning a trip. We're just going to take the whole family to Hawaii. Well, how are we going to pay for it? Well, we'll sell some of the furniture. And Mom was like, well, that's great. Where are we going to sit when we come home? Where are we going to sleep and where are we going to sit when we come home from this vacation?
I had no idea that.
Oh, yeah. He'd come up with... Well, Rudy and Jeff always have the get rich quick scheme. What's the next thing, as opposed to... That's the one thing about my dad that I do not have, and I'm so glad I don't have that one characteristic. I'm very much like, what job am I going to get? How am I going to stay there? How am I going to make money? So every time anything's like a chance outside, and I don't know if part of that's from growing up and my dad being willing to take such chances, and I'm scared of that because I saw what kind of fights it caused. But, yeah, oh God, did they fight. I can remember sitting on the front steps. That big house in Kennett had 2 stairwells. And I remember Will and Camille and I just sitting on the steps listening while they were fighting in the kitchen. And then I can remember being little and Will and Camille would get in on the fights because Rudy would start shit with Will and Camille would go in to defend Will. And it was not good.
Davey saying that Rudy was really mean to the kids.
Davey admitted it. He was, yeah. But Mom messed up in the divorce because she thought Pam, Jeff, and Dave should be with their father. So she said, I'm divorcing and that's it. But what she didn't realize is she had become the de facto mom to Davey. She was Davey's mom. And it broke his heart. And all she had to do, she finally did, but all she had to do was just get in the car and go see him and say, I'm still your mom. I'll be here whenever you want. But she didn't
was
do that.
5 years old
when Bernice died. Yeah, he was 7 when his mom died, and he was
still.
8 or 9. Like, it wasn't very much longer than that Sarah Ann became his mom,
right.
And she saw him through college, and
it broke his heart.
It did, and it screwed up all of his relationships with women, and he has based it all on every woman's gonna leave, and then he became a big pothead and drank too much, and I know that's one of her regrets in life is not having, and she's verbalized that, but she also is strong-willed.
She jumped in when he had the episode there at Pam's house when David died. She took over and took him to the hospital and did the whole...
Well, she's the fixer. Sarah Ann, if you're sick and something's wrong, you want Sarah Ann, because she's immediately on it.
Yeah.
And how do we fix this? And how do we problem solve? And what's the emergency? And then when it's done, okay, we're fine. Everybody back to my walls are back up. I'm in my little world. We're done until the next crisis. God forbid you say you got a sniffle or you're sick. Sarah Ann's on it like someone needs surgery. That's where she excels. She comes in and fixes things when there's a crisis. But then she doesn't know how to maintain the day-to-day. And that's just how she's always been. I think part of it's the awkward upbringing from being an only child and having a very complicated, screwed up mother. So I can see it all now as an adult, and I don't sit back and resent my parents for anything. I can see their shortcomings and see why they have them, and I try to embrace the good parts. But yeah,
That's healthy.
now that but it took me having a horrible breakup to be able to really empathize with my father, and to regret not having spent more time with him. But he was an asshole. And Pam and Dave and I have all discussed this. Oh yeah, he was such an asshole. But there's Rudy before the divorce and there's Rudy after the divorce, and they're two different people. So yeah, I know it's life. We have complicated families, and I'm gonna keep on till